conditioning that have air conditioning. So I apologize for that, but we'll try to keep cool. This is however, a hot topic, pardon the pun. Let me introduce myself to those of you who are new and who are drawn by this particular topic. My name is Rick Cole. It's been my honor to represent District 2 now for about a year and 3 months. And each month, actually, since I was elected, even before I took office, we've been having these issue forums. And the purpose is threefold, is to inform you about the issues that affect us. The second is to engage you in paying attention to these issues and being active in keeping informed. And the third is to activate you so that we can hear your voice. And so you get organized. And so we actually make democracy work because you get involved in your government. This is your government. And we have 20,000 folks who live in District 2. Obviously, all of them are not here, but some of them are online. But our goal is to reach as many people as possible, directly and indirectly with these issues. The reason I chose this topic is a year ago, of course, the Palisades and Altadena and parts of Pasadena were devastated by one of the worst urban fire disasters in American history. That was at one level a freak event, 100-mile-an-hour winds at the end of a 15-month dry period in Southern California. On the other hand, it may be the new normal. Not that we're going to have 100-mile-an-hour winds every day, but that climate change is clearly creating more extreme weather events, which is fuel for fire. So what do we do? I think everyone in this room can agree we should do everything we can to protect our communities, to protect our homes, to protect our lives, to protect our pets, to protect our future by as much as possible making ourselves resilient to future fire danger. Now, the question is how to do that. And that's our topic tonight. To address this, every one of our issue forums, we have a panel, and I'm particularly pleased at the depth of knowledge that is brought to this issue by our three panelists tonight. We have our fire chief, Chief Chad Augustin, and Chad is probably the most popular fire chief in the last half century in Pasadena, and I don't say that lightly or just because he's here. It is because he followed some troubled times, some low morale and some challenges. And the moment he walked in, he set a new tone. And there are no firefighters here that I know of. Firefighters, having been a city manager for 20 years, they are not easy to keep happy, I have to tell you. And so the fact is, yeah. The worst joke I ever made in my life, because it haunted me for the next 8 years I was city manager, was I introduced a very popular new chief in Ventura that I had hired. And I said, what's the difference between firefighters and puppies? Puppies stop whining when they grow up. That will get back to our firefighters, I am sure, and I'll have to apologize for that. But they didn't endorse me in the last election, so, No, seriously, firefighters are our first line of defense for medical emergencies, for treating homeless folks out on the street, and for running into burning buildings and saving lives. And that's why people love them. But it is a tough set of challenges because of all of the responsibilities that rest on a chief's shoulder. So Chief Augustine is somebody who we really value and we would like to keep for a long time. And so I keep pitching for that. We have one of our District 2 residents, Jessica Richard, who fought the battle to save the massive oak tree in McDonald Park, which the city had rather carelessly slated for cutting down and removing, simply because it had the city had been overwatering, and so it had sort of tilted. And so the real answer was not to cut it down, it was to quit overwatering. And so we've done that. And Jessica now is on the Urban Forestry Committee, which is charged with the responsibility for really taking care of our urban forest. We're trying to give them a little bit more prestige and clout in that regard, but that's an ongoing battle. And our closest expert in this field is Stephanie Landrigan, who brings professional expertise in this area. And she'll be giving a brief presentation to kind of provide a baseline for all of us. So let me just frame it, and then we'll get right into the discussion with Stephanie to kick us off. And that is, again, we all want safety. We all want to make commitments. And sometimes those things can be painful, but we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to denude Pasadena's wonderful urban forest and rich landscape that is so much the beauty of our city, if that doesn't make us safer, if in fact it might even in some cases make us less safe. So this is a tough issue, an important issue, a timely issue, and a controversial issue. And so we'll kick it off. Stephanie, you ready to start?
Yes. Thank you very much, Rick. I'm going to show you a couple of slides that will hopefully set the baseline. Can you show the one that shows the very high fire zone of the city? Nope, it's the one that looks like a map.
There you go.
There. So
Yeah, if you have to get right up to the microphone.
now can you hear me?
A little better.
Is that better? All right, thank you. I'm sorry. So move my head around. So if you look at Pasadena here, you will see that it is the area around the Arroyo and up on San Rafael that are the areas that are in the very high fire severity zones. These are new zones that were actually introduced by the state fire marshal and approved in May by many cities and counties. Now you'll also look and see where Altadena has the very high fire zone. But what you also need to look at is where the fire was past these very high fire severity zones. The very high fire severity zones are the ones where you are going to be asked to respond to the very possible conflagration and wildfires. So that's important to know. And you can look at the fire maps on the web, and it'll show you with your address. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you, because the determination for what is going to happen to your insurance is based not supposedly on these maps, but because you will be in a fire zone that has a very high fire severity designation. That's an important thing to remember. Now, if you would show the first picture you did, when you look at Altadena, it was not the trees who burned Altadena. The trees survived. Many of the trees survived this wind-driven fire. It was a structure-to-structure fire. So we need to remember that the important thing for us is to protect what is most precious to us is our lives. And if we're going to be inside our homes, we need to harden our homes, because some of the situation is going to be, what are the different methods of becoming defensible? And the first one should be, how do we make our homes defensible against fire? That's important to remember. And then we also need to look at, do we have landscaping and obstacles? I mean, we do not want to put our grill under our eaves. That is just logical. You don't want to keep your firewood next to your house.
Your barbecue grill, yes.
Yes, or your barbecue, right. So there are some very common sense elements to a defensible space. So we're going to be talking about that, but I'm not going to get into that because I just want to set it up. And I have a third slide. Is that correct? This is what, and I don't know if you saw the slides. Yeah. All right. So this is what is called Zone Zero. These slides are straight off the Board of Forestry's webpage. What you see is Zone Zero is the area from your structure 5 feet out that is what is being discussed by the Zone Zero Board of Forestry for a regulation that is being enacted from a piece of legislation that was actually approved in 2020. So it's not legislation, it's regulation. And it's in what is called finally, the sausage making part, because you go from the legislation and you go to the actual department who is going to enforce it, and they look at what are the codes and what codes need to be either changed, modified, or are introduced, and then they create the regulation. Now, you'll see the one on the right is a pretty dire place in the middle of the forest. But that is what can happen in a forest. And we all don't have 100-foot square properties. So there's one more slide. Oh, did I? Yeah. It's a graph. That one. All right, because we don't need to show the other ones. What you're going to look at here is on the right-hand side is kind of a graphic of that 100-foot property and the 5-foot Zone Zero, the next Zone 2, which is 30 feet out, and Zone 3, which goes 100 feet out. But what you're going to see on the other side is what an urban environment looks like. Zone 1 butts up to your Zone 1, your neighbor's Zone 1. Zone 2 is your neighbor's house. So what we've been working with the Board of Forestry to discuss is in an urban context. How do we create a Zone Zero regulation that deals within the urban context as well as with the forest? So that's a little bit of just how to start this off.
So Chief, you're respected not only because you're beloved, but because you're a data hound. You have more than any other department in our city. You look at results, you look at how long it takes us to get to an incident, you take a look at what the results of those are, you take a look at all of those things. And a lot of people are operating on anecdote. I saw this, I saw that. What does the data show about in an urban environment? What are the most significant fire dangers? And is it vegetation?
First off, thank you for having me here tonight. And thank you all for being here. I would separate that question into two different things. Straight structure fires, because we have very frequent cause and origins on our structure fires, unattended heating sources, people smoking while they fall asleep. We could go down that list. But when we talk about brush fires, and brush fires that are extending, right, we very rarely have what we saw on January 7th. And it really was just, we had red flag conditions. We had, as Councilmember Cole said, 15 months of severe drought, and then a fire that spread with 100-mile-an-hour winds. And so I saw, as I was driving to the fire, I saw embers the size of softballs going well over a mile ahead of the fire. And so when we talk about that, that is such an extreme event. Usually when we see fires that are brush fires extending to into houses, it is because of poor maintenance around your house, poor pour clearance around your roof lines, having wood shingles. It's having trees that are overlapping over your roof and drop hot embers. Those are very predictable, but ember cast 2 miles ahead of a fire were conditions that really previously were beyond what the experts had said was something that was predictable.
Jessica, you've devoted over the last year a lot of attention to this. What have you learned?
Well, thank you as well for hosting this important topic. So what I have learned is that if we do look at the data, and again, it's a patchwork, we're still learning more, but there's really good data that was double peer reviewed that came out last year that showed that the highest risk factor is structure proximity. How close you are to your neighbor has the greatest predictive factor in terms of whether your home will be lost in a wind-driven fire event. So that kind of means that maybe all this talk about plants is maybe scapegoating plants, right? If that's not the biggest risk, then we need to really be honest about that. There are certain common sense things that research has shown that we do need to do around plants, but it is more targeted about maintenance. That is what has been clear study after study. It's the maintenance of plants that is really the key factor. And Stephanie, being an expert in the field of landscape architecture, can speak to that even more clearly, but the plants themselves being well hydrated at times can even be an ember shield or a windshield and help actually break and catch some of those embers. I think there's a neighbor actually in the audience who showed me, yes, picture leaves from her tree after the fire that had burn holes in them. Now her home is intact. It's fine. That tree might have saved it, right? So again, I can't say that that happens in every case, but again, we need to be more nuanced and really look at the data. And if we don't have all the data yet to say unequivocally if this tree is okay or not, then we need to collect that data before we make drastic regulations that will have a dramatic effect on our homes, making them hotter, right? If we remove vegetation and shade, boy, oh boy, it's going to be a lot hotter. I wanted to say those maps that Stephanie showed you, that those are the areas that would be most directly impacted by this regulation once it is finalized. However, I have heard already in my neighborhood, District 2, Bungalow Heaven, that folks are receiving notices from their insurance company about removing vegetation. So what I'm particularly concerned about, because I'm not in a very high fire severity zone. That is not where my residence is, but I'm still taking up this fight because A, our ecology matters, and B, I don't believe it's just going to be limited to those areas red on the map. And so that might be speculation, but again, the notices are going out and people don't know. They don't know. They're scared to lose their insurance. And what I would hate is for people to spend thousands of dollars. Actually, Chief Augustine, you have a quote of how much it would cost. How much is it to comply with this?
We're estimating anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 for most households. That's a significant amount of money just to come into compliance.
And now the insurance companies are saying, we'll give you a discount. I've heard that's in the tune of like a couple $100 potentially. I don't know. I'm not a math major, but a couple hundred versus, tens of thousands doesn't really add up to me. So I'm really glad that all of you have come out to take an interest and learn more about this topic, because there's some that say it's zone 0 information. Most people don't know about it. Most people haven't heard, and yet it's going to have a dramatic effect.
And it's a three-pronged battle. There is, at the state level, there are regulations being promulgated that will affect various communities in various ways. Then some cities have stepped forward. Berkeley, which has had a history of wildfire spreading into more suburban areas, particularly in the foothills, has adopted a zone 0 that is pretty draconian. It's being phased in over 3 years. So it's not immediate, but over 3 years. And they have instituted annual inspections both to alert people to what is going on as, or what is coming, I should say, but also to begin the process of tightening their regulations. I'm getting some questions. I should have explained this at the beginning. For the first part of our discussion tonight, if you're watching on Zoom, please put it in the question and answer, and we will feed some of those questions. If you have a question, Megany will give you a card, and I'll feed those questions in. Okay, so you're not alone. I'm getting the signal. So we'll sure. I apologize for not enforcing that more rigorously, including to myself. So if you have a question, write it down and we'll feed those questions in. At the end, we always have time for direct questions or comments. If you have something you want to get off your chest, you'll have an opportunity to do that. In the meantime, though, if you have questions, feed them in. So as I was saying, there's 3 different dimensions. There's the state level regulations. There's potential local regulations, which may or may not track with state regulations. And then finally, there's the insurance company, which has the ability, unless we change our laws, to make their own regulations for their customers. Chief, is there an appetite at the local level to take this on?
Councilmember Cole, if I can, I'm going to take a step back just so that everybody's has the same working knowledge. Prior to Zone 0, Pasadena had about 3,900 homes that were in the very high fire hazard severity zones. We have 100% compliance. We send out mailers. We walk every single one of those properties annually and inspect them. And our whole goal is to partner with the resident to point out areas, things that could lead to fire spread, ways that they can make their property and residents safer. We do that every year. With the new maps that came out, we went from about 3,900 to just under 4,700 residences. State Fire Marshal put the maps out. We learned about them at the same time as the residents did. We had zero oversight or ability to weigh in on them. We had 30 days to post them, and then I think 120 days to adopt. By regulation, we could be more severe, but not less. And so to answer your question, from a local level, we had very little ability to weigh in on that. Next, to answer your question more directly, when I communicate with fire chiefs up and down the state, specifically Cal chiefs, very few fire chiefs are taking this on. What you'll hear is a wait and see. And partly, then when we go to the next level, the Cal chiefs fire marshal section, what they're advocating for is an all or nothing with no options, because they think that at a local level, it's very challenging to try and enforce that. So what you see then is fire chiefs standing on the sideline. My perspective is that from a local level, we can and should. Pasadena does a great job partnering with our residents. We should advocate for local control to do what's best for Pasadena, not a rural area in Northern California that has a totally different level of risk.
Okay. So Jessica, what's your biggest concern right now? Is it at the state level? Is it at the local level? Is it with our insurance companies?
All of the above.
Okay.
On the state level, the State Board of Forestry is meeting again on April 23rd. Folks can zoom in on that and also submit public comments. So if there's things that you hear today and you want to have a say on a state level, I can get you the information. I think it's public comments at bof.ca.gov, but I'll double check that. Because that is they are poised to pass this regulation maybe at this meeting, maybe the next one. That has been a little bit unpredictable. And what they will pass is likely one of the 4 options that they have outlined. Now, option 1 is total removal of all vegetation within the perimeter around your home, replacing it with gravel, rock, or concrete. Okay. Now you are allowed, fret not, 10 potted plants, 5 gallons or less, 18 inches or lower. They must be separated by a distance of 18 inches at least, not under a window, door, or vent. So that's going to be really fun to comply with. And so that is the most draconian option. Now, that is the option being pushed by the insurance industry pretty hard, right? That is also the option that isn't supported by the scientists and researchers that I'm hearing about. Now, I will claim, I'm not going to claim I'm a fire scientist. I am not. But I have taken enough interest to listen on calls hosted by UCLA on this topic, listening to experts, and I haven't heard one that says that option 1, this most draconian one, is backed by science. Now, there might be gaps in our science. If we learn more later and that's what we have to do, that'd be good to know. But we don't yet have that science. Option 2 and option 3 are kind of middle ground. I won't go through that because it's just, we'll be here all night. But option 4 says things like remove wood piles, remove dead leaves, dead branches, and vegetation. It does call for something that might be unpopular, but I think actually is backed by science, which is removing the attached wood part of your fence. So you don't have to replace your whole wood fence, but just the part that attaches to your home needs to be swapped out for something non-combustible. So it's things like that in option 4 that seems like a more reasonable attempt to mitigate risk and yet preserving the needed ecology and actually the benefits of vegetation that we have around our homes.
Stephanie, what's your thought about those 4 options?
Well, I believe that Jessica hit on the concerns we have. I have my, I started a nonprofit with a bunch of other folks up in Altadena called Altadena Green. We started work on January 17th. The fire was the 6th and 7th of January, and 2 of our friends lost their homes. And we noticed that the trees remained, but they had all these markings on them. And so we discovered, and we worked with scientists to find out why the trees were around, and many of the trees had been burned by the structures and not versa versa. And so what I am concerned about is that we're working with Francisco Escobedo, who is with the U.S. Forest Service. He's actually here this week up in Altadena doing some studies. Alessandro and a few other of the scientists all around, Max Morris, who's outside of Santa Barbara. All of these people are studying the fires. And what we have seen is that the vegetation, if it is well maintained and well hydrated, as we all know, trying to set a tree on fire that is living is going to take a considerable amount of effort, and that should not be one of the victims of this new legislation. Now we have, Jessica and I have both advocated since last March when this became part of our monthly meetings to protect trees. It started off with that trees had to be trimmed 10 feet back from the house, which no legislation should tell you how to take care of a living thing, because cutting it 10 feet back has nothing to do with its structure, its form, and we objected to this. Then we also were concerned that all of the vegetation was being removed, and gravel and hardscape was being proposed. Especially if you go up to Altadena right now, it is 10 degrees hotter than it has ever been because the trees are gone. vegetation actually creates a microclimate, and we have been working very hard here in the city of Pasadena to increase shade. That's the same that was happening up in Altadena. So how do we balance the need for shade, which reduces our consumption of electricity in the summer with air conditioning? And it also has to do with the fact that we have been in a drought and our vegetation requires water to survive. So there are a lot of different moving parts here that we have to address. But our scientists say that vegetation can act as an ember sink, especially if you have viable soil. It will not catch fire. So you have to force yourself to do the maintenance. And we all are not the best at our maintenance. So this will become something that is going to be part of the fire department's requirement to check on. Because seriously, it isn't going to be the chief and the fire department out there. It is going to be the insurance company who's going to say, you're not following the city's code. We're not going to cover you unless you do. So how do we make sure that whatever this is, because the council member is correct, there's both the state law, which we have opposed it being a one-size-fits-all. It just is ridiculous to assume that what works in the forest will work in Pasadena. And we have fire personnel who know what they're doing. But at the same time, then we have the fire department who knows what they're doing and have an understanding of local conditions and also local plants. And also how long we've had a drought, so they understand the existing conditions. But we have the insurance companies who, you know, how many of you have a great risk appetite? How many of you own crypto? No kidding. Well, the truth of the matter is that I'm sorry, is that we can mitigate risk. You can mitigate risk the way the insurance company is proposing, which is to remove all vegetation, or you can mitigate risk so that it is something that you can handle. And that's what the discussion really is happening right now at the state level.
So this is a good time to introduce a little bit of nuance about vegetation, because not all vegetation is the same. And this person in our audience asks, oak trees in California can't be cut down. There's some nuance to that. What happens if your house has an oak tree near a house? Can it be cut down, or how are the regulations being tailored to account for this conflict? And what about eucalyptus trees? Are they tiki torches, or are they part of a non-native, but are they part of our landscape?
Oak trees are one of the most fire resilient trees in the world, and especially our California oak, which is Quercus agrifolia. There are even studies in the forest where actual clusters of oak trees stopped a wildfire from advancing because they are so resilient. Now, some of this is myth as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, it's urban myth. We have urban myths here. You go up to Altadena and you go down Christmas Tree Lane and you tell me those deodars didn't save those homes. And I'm going to tell you, everybody in that house, those houses, believe the deodars saved their homes. So
it is a fact that none of those trees on Christmas Tree Lane burned, and a number of the houses did.
Exactly. So how do we how do we have zone zero without gutting nature? This regulation, to answer your question, will leave protected trees in place, so you will not be requested to take them out. I would say if I have 3 oak trees, I swear to God, they're going to protect my house under any fire that comes because they're well cared for. And I keep all of the stuff off of the roof. So these regulations are not going to countermand protected tree ordinances. And
Stephanie,
you
is
and
that
us-
true for both of the options? I thought one option for trees would respect local ordinance, but not both of them. But you clarify. I'm not sure if I have
one
that correct.
calls it out, but the other one doesn't call it out, so it isn't, uh, so they're both protected both ways. One limits the protection to only oak trees that are protected, protected trees, and the other one doesn't single out protected trees. There are two tree options.
With
but-
that in mind, which one do you advocate for? Which option for trees?
Not calling out protected trees. I think a large mature tree is just as valuable as a protected tree, whatever it is.
Okay.
It's going to serve a good purpose. Eucalyptus trees are fire adapted. They burn all the time down in Australia, and they come back, and half the eucalyptus trees survived up there. Do I recommend we plant them? No, I would not plant them. I love eucalyptus trees, but I don't think that when we live in the WUI or we live in an area where we have a lot of wildfires, it's the best plant.
Okay. Chief, I think we can go early to the audience here, but your thoughts about the position you find yourself in on behalf of our fire department between a rock and a hard place, between expectations that you will protect us at 0% risk, right? But when it comes to life and property, we don't want to lose any. And you have the insurance companies and you have your responsibility to enforce state law. How can you navigate this and what's the role of the city council?
I'm concerned mainly because I'm concerned we're going to lose the partnership and relationship we have with our community. We take a lot of pride in walking property and having a partnership of saying, Mrs. Smith, this is the area that we need you to cut back. This is the area that you have increased risk. We have out of 4,000 homes prior to the change, we may do enforcement on less than 5 in a year because it's a true partnership. I'm very concerned we're going to lose that partnership because now we've always had an enforcement leg, but we haven't had to use it. Now we have such draconian options. We're very concerned that we're going to be put into a position where we have to do enforcement. And then we don't have the staff to actually do the enforcement. So I'm concerned on multiple levels.
Another controversial tree is palms, and palms come in lots of different species, but they also have been blamed, particularly for when windstorms happen. The fronds can be flying embers and actually be the carriers of fire. What is everyone's thoughts about palm trees, an iconic Southern California symbol, even though they're not from Southern California?
But there's only one palm tree that is native to California, and it's out in Palm Springs. So I believe that in a fire zone, palm trees are a hazard. They should not be there. If you do go up to Altadena, you'll see that the palm trees survived. Many of them just had burned trunks. But as the council members said, once they do ignite, if their skirts are there, they become flying softballs of flame that are just dangerous. And this is not the right place for us to have them.
I had personal experience with that when my twin daughters said, "Dad, why are we sitting here watching television? Why aren't we up in Altadena helping?" We first went to 2 homes. One of my friends, one of their friends, both were gone when we got there. And as we were coming back down Santa Rosa, we saw that the senior center on I think it's Mariposa was engulfed in flame. The the north side of Mariposa had already been burned down. There was a fire at the corner across from the library. And the library, the palm trees there were smoking from various embers that had landed on them. And so we spent about 4 hours there at the library trying to keep the palm trees from igniting. And various fire trucks pulled up and the firefighters wanted to help, but at that point there was no water. And it wasn't because Altadena had run out of water. It was because the electric pumping systems had been knocked out. And so the water was no longer being pumped. And so the fire hydrant in front of the library was dead. So the firefighters couldn't help us. So we finally discovered that the next door neighbors had a swimming pool. And so we organized a little bucket brigade to keep the palm trees. But the palm trees, it seemed very clear that if the palm trees caught on fire, we would have lost the library. And so eucalyptus, palm trees, not necessarily a death sentence for them, but certainly a high caution about planting them, and given where they are, making sure that that in high fire danger areas that we take a hard look at them. So I'm going to open it up now to your comments or questions. The only thing I ask of you is that you be brief. If your question is brief, that's fine. If you want to make a comment, that's fine. Just be brief so everyone has an opportunity to be heard. So if you have questions for the panel or you have a comment you'd like to make, who would like to start? Okay. And just say your name.
My name is Linus Sora. I obviously live at District 2. I am not a homeowner, I'm a renter. But I guess I think I'm pretty against this concept of removing things in 5 feet. So what would be the steps if we want to? Because if it's a state issue, it's nice to hear about it, it's nice to talk about, but what do we actually do to combat if the legislation is happening soon?
So Jessica, do you want to repeat the timeline and how people can weigh in about
Yes.
the state regulations?
Thank you. And I'm going to share how to weigh in state and local. I realize I skipped over that question, that part of the
Okay.
question, but on the state level, I would encourage you to write in an email to public comments at BOF, that's in for Board of Forestry, .ca.gov. I'll repeat it a couple times. Public comments, plural, all one word, all together, at bof.ca.gov. Again, that's public comments at bof.ca.gov.
And to remember, BOF, that's the Board of Forestry.
Board of Forestry. On a local level, I would really welcome City Council taking up this agenda item and either doing something like the City of Glendale, generating a letter, a memorandum to the Board of Forestry, advocating for what we think is appropriate for our area and maintaining that local control. Or as the City of LA did, which is they have charged their fire chief and their legal team to come up with their own regulations to supersede the state ones based on option 4, which is the one that allows you to have well-maintained, common sense, defensible space regulations, and option 2 for trees, which is going to preserve more trees, not just the protected ones under ordinance.
I'm a neighbor. I live in Sierra Madre. But you have a perfect example of the value of oak trees if you just take a look at Eaton Canyon. The 1993 fire burned down the Eaton Canyon Nature Center that I think dated from the 20s. But the oak woodland remained. Then in 2020, which year was it? 25, Eaton Canyon rebuilt Nature Center burned and the oak trees remained. They act as an airfoil. And I've seen a photograph of a video, but I can't seem to locate it online, where a forester was sitting in a forestry dwelling in the foothills somewhere of California. and a wildfire was raging toward him, but he stayed put and he just videotaped the fire lift up and over the building because of the airfoil action of these oak trees. Richard Snyder, who is a resident of Pasadena, was our fire marshal. He had a phone call one time from a neighbor to me who was told by her overzealous insurance adjuster she had to cut down all her oak trees. And I went online and I looked just now again at the state fire marshal's list of the first tree on the list to plant in a high fires severity zone are oak trees. So it was just an overzealous fire insurance adjuster who hadn't really looked at his list recently, or if ever. And then we're asked, you don't want to ask your constituents to live in a gravel pit. It has to be a balance between this distance from the home so the fire embers don't impinge, start close in brush, and preheat the house, and yet the oak trees will maintain.
All right. Next question.
Before we addressing plans and taking such a drastic measure, why we don't address the most fire hazardous overhead wiring in Pasadena? Hold this infrastructure before spending $100,000 removing plants. Maybe we should put wire underground. I'm witness personally during the fire. This started from the from overhead wiring falling down.
It's a good point. And as a matter of fact, I serve on actually on 3 of the 6 committees that we have on our city council. And the Municipal Services Committee, the Municipal Services Committee took up this very issue in the last year of undergrounding. Here's the good news. We are moving forward rapidly with undergrounding high voltage wires that come into the city. Those are the ones that caught on fire allegedly. I think we're probably beyond allegedly in Eaton Canyon. And so we are dealing with that. That's the good news. The bad news is we all pay a fairly hefty surcharge for undergrounding. And a huge part of Pasadena has already been undergrounded. If you go down Washington Boulevard, if you go down Orange Grove, if you go down Mountain, those overhead wires are gone. Where the overhead wires exist is in the backs of our houses, right? All over the city. And it's turned out to be hellishly expensive. Why is that? Because every time we touch those, the cable company, the phone company has to also underground their wires. And so all of that has to come forward. We actually have 2 projects going on now. One is on Raymond Avenue. A big stretch of Raymond Avenue is being undergrounded. The next one is Mountain Avenue between Lake and Hill. The Raymond Avenue, I think, cost $12 million. So we are slowing to a crawl on that. And the funding for that would be very substantial. But I would agree with you that that is a significant, when the winds knock down a live wire, that's a very dangerous situation. So we're going to spend more time on that. I am dissatisfied that we are allowing these costs to have ballooned so much that we have slowed down our undergrounding. And I think we have to take a look at how we can drive down those costs, because undergrounding wires is an important mitigation. There's some hands over here. You happen to be in the front row.
My name is Gene. I live on Las Lunas. I've heard discussion so far about vegetation, but at the beginning you mentioned something about hardening the house. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, are any of these proposed rules like going to make you get a new roof, or if you wanted to do it, is there any practical way of doing it really?
It turns out that one of those key things, and I'll let you start, Chief, and others. One of those things is the various orifices that embers can be sucked up into, and screening those is really, really important. Chief?
Everything Councilmember Cole just said, plus having, when we look at things that can get onto your roof, like So any tree branches with, especially if you have trees, pine trees, needles, anything that can drop on your roof and catch your roof on fire, anything that can be sucked into an attic vent, anything that can be sucked into your gutters. If you have a wood burning stove and you stack wood next to your home, we want to make sure that there's 5 feet of clearance. But I'm going to do you one better. I'll give you my card before we walk out, and I'll have my team. We'll walk your property with you, and we can educate you on what proper clearance looks like.
You're talking about something coming off a tree and getting on your roof. I'm talking about the roof itself.
Right.
I mean, because there's people promoting get a different roof, a fire resistant roof, et cetera. Are there any rules that are being talked about saying that if you get a new roof, it's got to have such and such a resistance to fire? Or are we still on our own? about
What type
that?
of roof do you have currently?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, asphalt.
Okay. Asphalt's good. What's really troublesome is when we have wood shake shingle, right? That can readily burn. So when we have tile, concrete, asphalt, anything like that, that's not readily gonna add to the fire load.
I think that wood shake is pretty rare in Pasadena by now.
It's definitely when you're re-roofing, yes, but when you drive Pasadena, there's still a lot of homes that have wood shake shingle on them. They're just older homes, and if we're being honest, it's expensive to re-roof your home, but it's one of the top areas as you're looking to do a remodel or when it's time to change your roof out. Definitely, then you want to go to a more fire-resistant material. I'm going to ask my colleagues if there's anything that you'd like to add to either of those.
Hardening your house.
To harden your house there, you want to make sure that you clear any of the areas where embers will catch. So if you have a craftsman house, you have exposed eaves. And in that, you would be able to have little fires start in those areas. What a lot of the changes that are called hardening will change some of the architectural character of your house, unfortunately. You would want to box the eaves with an area, a material that is fire resistant. Typically, it's a hardy board. It's used typically to emulate that. It boxes it in. Many vents, there are now roofs that are ventless. They require air conditioning so that the house constantly vents. You have under your roofs, you have vents. Most people have 1/8 inch right now, and it should be 16th inch metal wire. And there are 16th inch screens out there that are not metal. And so you want to make sure it's metal and it's coated. And that is what will stop the embers from going into your attic, or if you have a raised foundation, into your basement. And many of the homes in Altadena and in Pasadena were burning from the basement and the attic together.
We have a lot of hands and we'll get to you. We have time. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Rich Schneider. I was a fire marshal, fire captain for 36 years over in Sierra Madre and specialized in wildland interface fires and fire prevention. And what you're saying is absolutely true, but just to clarify, that's for new construction. There's no code for existing structures to become fire hardened. That's taken on by the homeowner. Also wanted to clarify on the CAL FIRE maps, that map we showed is a CAL FIRE map. It is a hazard map that dictates building standards, that homes that are in that map, when they're built from new, have to meet the home hardening 7A standard. Insurance companies, they know about the maps. They don't really care about those maps. They have their own maps and their proprietary maps. They don't share them. They don't share them with each other. In fact, they can't by law share them with each other because of Prop 103. And I've had houses in Carolina, I've talked about this before. I've had houses in Sierra Madre that were deep into the CAL FIRE map who had State Farm insurance. I had houses that weren't even close to the map that were in FAIR Plan. So those are risk maps. And the things you're hearing about changing the roof, doing the vents, doing 0 to 5, these are things that are coming out of the insurance industry on reducing risk. Now, I'm working very closely with insurance companies to educate them on what actual risk is, and we're making some headway. But I just wanted those clarifications on
That's
the
really
maps.
helpful. Thank
That
you.
if you may not be in the zone, but are in the FAIR plan and vice versa. So I hope that.
You want to hand it to gentleman in the red shirt here? Mr. Siegel?
Hi, I live near the Arroyo in District 1. And we, for the first time in, I don't know how many years, our insurance company is threatening to terminate us. We live in an old Spanish style house. And we're gonna have to spend a lot of money on tree trimming that I didn't think we would necessarily have to do. But my question really is, we have wood eaves, not wood gutters. Should we get rid of those?
I would ask your insurance company to come and walk the property with you. But the reason,
Speak up a little bit more.
oh, I'm sorry. I would ask, there are two ways you can do it. You can ask your insurance company to send out somebody and walk it with you, because you have a right by California insurance law, which nobody knows, to challenge it or to ask them to explain exactly what it is that you have to do. The other option is somebody like Rich Snyder, who just talked, there's a it's a California group that will certify your house and work with you and tell you elements that you can do that will make your house fire safe, certify it, which you can send to your insurance company. And that's usually considerably cheaper than trimming all your trees willy-nilly without knowing what to do.
Okay, we'll go to one of our younger members of the audience.
Hi, I'm Ketsai, and I have a question. So if they do decide and cut the vegetation or tree, and you said they would replace it with concrete or gravel, who decides which material they're going to use for either the concrete or gravel?
I think homeowners are left to that
Okay.
choice of concrete, gravel, or
So
rocks.
it's not
You've
the
got-
city or the state's choice at all?
No, you've got a menu of gray options.
Okay, thank you.
That was gray options, not great
Yeah,
options.
yes, thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on the question about where we should be sending comments. So you mentioned the state public hearing, and that's a place to give comments. And then you said local and talked about the cities. I'm a displaced Altadenan who is enjoying her sojourn and sabbatical in the fair city of Pasadena. But what about the county? What's the role of the county when it comes to these regulations?
Good question.
So the county of LA is being proactive, and there's some folks that Stephanie and I are in contact with that are very actively involved at the county level. And so they are looking at codifying options for LA. So that is one that is already happening. And if you want to get more involved, you can talk to us at the end and we can help you get connected. On our very local level here in Pasadena, it's emailing this guy, if he's your district rep, about getting this on the agenda. And, obviously he's very sensitive to this topic, hence, hosting this forum. But, having support from your constituents helps you, right? So,
And we
that's
have
at the local level.
One committee I do not serve on is the Public Safety Committee. That is now newly chaired by Jess Rivas. Some of you may be Jess Rivas constituents. I believe Tyrone Hampton is on that. I believe Victor Gordo is on, no, I know Steve Madison is on there. Tyrone Hampton is on there.
And Justin Jones.
And Justin Jones. Okay. So Chief, you lean forward. You have some
did.
comment.
We also have our next ledge policy meeting on the 31st, and
Legislative policy, yes.
which we're going to talk about Zone 0. But I do want to make a
On
comment.
the date again?
March 31st.
Okay,
At
again.
6, I think,
Again,
right?
not everybody may know this, but the council meets on Monday night. But we also have 6 committees. A lot of work is done in the committees. Those are public meetings. Those I don't think are broadcast, but they are recorded. And so you can, and the agendas are online. And so the Legislative Policy Committee, here's the, excellent. Here is, can you go to Leg Policy?
Just
Yeah. So you go down and there's legislative policy and you click on there and that'll show the latest agenda. The new agenda for the 21st has not yet been posted, but a few days before, a minimum of 48 hours before, or 72 hours, excuse me, before, that the agenda for the 21st will be posted. And look here, you just click here, submit public comment. So you read the agenda and then you send an email and it will, you just type in your email address. If you want to put your address, your physical address, so that they know that you live, in their district, it will be redacted by the city clerk. They don't want the whole world to know where you live. And your email address will also be redacted. So you have privacy, but this is the way to be heard at the local level, is to look up the agenda and to submit a public comment. Right here, you have the mic. Oh,
Can
that's
I
right.
finish with the lady on the county?
Oh, yes, please.
Ron Durbin is the fire chief for the county of Los Angeles. And he has been actively involved in some of this legislation that's happening at the state. The reason is because some of the county is in what is called the state responsibility area as opposed to the local responsibility area. And he is very much interested in us having, the county having a piece of regulation that is not going to be burdensome for them to enforce. And so that they are following it that way. We don't see anything, the supervisors have not put forth anything on this. There are 4 supervisors who are most heavily affected because they're in the very high fire severity zones, but it's not all the supervisors, so it's often hard to put something on the agenda for the whole county. Ron Durbin, and he is the fire chief for the county. Very terrific guy.
I want to mention that the next legislative committee meeting is out of sequence. If you look on the website, it says it's the first Tuesday of every month. They're moving it up to instead March 31st because there is a timeliness since the Board of Forestry's meeting towards the end of April. So we want our local folks to get ahead of this. So that's why if you actually look at the website, it'll be a little confusing. It is March 31st. They're moving it up. But all the other information that Councilmember Rick showed you in terms of submitting a comment, absolutely, please do that.
Yadi.
Hello, thank you.
Speak up, Yadi.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You gave us a lot of really good information, and I think what may be helpful for the public and wanting to get engaged is, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that the community should be advocating for? And then I'll just really quickly tell you my story. I live in District 4. I was in the Eaton fire zone. Our community did not burn down, thankfully, but a lot of the issues that were raised by that you hear, we were like canceled by State Farm. There's a lot of neighbors that are in the California plan, and some I helped switch to private insurance. And both the California and the private insurance, even though we're not in a high fire severity zone, we're still being required to remove all the vegetation, all of the wood fencing, everything around our homes. There's nothing about home hardening. And the thing is that these requirements are coming down from the insurance providers about 3 months before policy renewal. So we really it's with our backs against our wall. And so I don't know if you want to just really emphasize that this is not just impacting folks that are in the high fire severity zone, but it's way, way broader than that.
Any comment?
I mean, that's absolutely true. And so you might be saying, well, what is the big deal about all this legislation and regulation if the insurance companies are going to do what the insurance companies do? That's kind of what I hear you saying. I think there's still a role for what the state sets as regulation will help be justification for the insurance companies.
It's
So,
a black hole right now.
right.
They're waiting for this legislation and they're taking advantage of it. And that's why you are getting all of these insurance notices right now.
So write into the Board of Forestry, get involved on the local level, and share with your neighbors. I mean it. I mean, all of you are here, but think about everyone else getting these notices to remove trees or trim them back heavily or all these other things, pull out the grass. They don't know, and they're terrified that they're going to get dropped. And so, my concern is that this regulation, the insurance industry already has us tied in knots. My concern is that this regulation is going to give them more rope to tie us up more.
My name is Bill Joseph. I'm in the real estate business, and I'll just tell you that the insurance industry, and this is not my main question, is in a state of crisis right now. I've had my home, the insurance on my home canceled. I've had the insurance on a rental property in East LA canceled. I mean, this is even before you get to the issue of the fire,
Right.
issues. But just if people aren't aware of that, I'm making you aware of it. The main question I had though is, I have had a couple of contractors in my home, and I've asked them about installing ember-proof vents, and they either don't care, they don't want to be bothered, or they don't know about it. And so my question is, to make an analogy, I happen to call the Pasadena Water and Power, and wouldn't you know, you can get free insulation, you can get new sprinkler heads. I didn't even know it. And the only reason I called them is because I kept getting all these calls from contractors and wanted to do work on my home, but I didn't really believe them. So I called the city of Pasadena, and again, I'm getting free insulation, new sprinklers, and a air conditioning check. So my question is, does the city have any program to help pay for these ember-proof vents? Or if they don't, do they at least have some recommended contractors that we can call to have that work done?
Currently, the answer to that is no. And we also very rarely will recommend a specific contractor without having gone through a request for proposal or having vetted. But that doesn't mean that we can't get direction from council to have a preferred list of contractors that our residents could utilize.
Yeah, and so that's to reduce energy usage because the peak is very expensive for all of us. We all pay for that peak. So if we can reduce the peak by your home being insulated on the electricity side, and the sprinklers is of course for reducing water consumption. The more we level out our usage, the better it is for all of us as ratepayers. I will also alert you about electric rates before we finish up here tonight. Here, and then here, and then here, and then we'll wrap up. Okay.
Okay, one of the things I wonder about is whether we're going to get into bureaucratic catch-22s. I had to get rid of a tree that was unbelievably obviously dead. And it was a 20-page form, about a 3 or 4 month process to be allowed to take it down, even though the arborist said it's a clear and present hazard. And you get a form back from the city that says you're supposed to plant at least 2 or 3 trees to replace the big one you've been taking down. And there wasn't room to do that. So that whole process has to get a lot cleaner, because I bet people have dead trees and they see the form, they say, I'll just wait till it falls down. So there's a whole process there that needs some work.
Appreciate that. And then here.
Hi, my name is Igor. I live in District 1. So I actually live on one of the streets that happen to have underground power lines. And I can tell you from my experience during those fires, it was a blessing, because at no point did I feel like our street is going to catch on fire? And we actually had a tree fall down. And if there were any power lines, it would have absolutely been a huge problem because it would have to call the electrical company and most likely somebody would get shocked. As far as my question, so I have like a follow-up question to Jessica. You mentioned that City of LA tried to supersede with their rules. Does that mean they can only make it stricter? Like, so for example, Pasadena, can you choose, as a city, can they choose to do something more lenient? And then my second question is, I guess to the fire chief and to the City of LA, like the gentleman mentioned earlier, I happen to be a recent homeowner. So of course, our generation, we didn't buy the house for $20. So I actually know of this and it's very useful. So to me, it seems like it's very, very intuitive for the city to buy in bulk, for example, these nets and promote it as a program, as rebates or some sort of like giving away, kind of like they do containers for example, for food scraps, where the city can buy it in bulk and distribute it to residents who choose to install it themselves or have a handyman install these safety nets. Because as I'm sure the fire chief can confirm, there's a difference between the fire that touches your wall and gets replaced, and there's a whole new level once the fire gets in the attic, because at that point it's almost a goner, as you can confirm, the house. Like you need a whole crew to stop that kind of fire. Thank you.
So I'll respond to the first part. When I said supersede, the truth is we don't know how whatever the City of LA codifies will square up with state legislation. I don't think we know that. I think the point is a big county like LA taking a stand saying this is what is appropriate for our area based on the science will hopefully have an impact on the Board of Forestry's decision. So it may not technically supersede it, but it takes a stand.
And if I can add to that, Jessica's spot on. What if you had one option? Yes, come to your local level, come to Ledge Policy, advocate. But once the Board of Forestry, once this is enacted and it becomes a regulation, then at the local level, we lose control. And that's what we don't want. We want to maintain the local control. So the advocacy, the writing of your letters, write to the Board of Forestry into that email address. That's really where you can make a difference. Once it's codified, we're in trouble.
Unless the city of Pasadena does like the city of LA and takes a stand.
We can take a stand, but once the state enacts a regulation, then we lose the and right now on a monthly level, monthly basis, there's assembly bills being floated to retain local control. But as it stands right now, once the state enacts it, then we will have at a local level, we'll have 3 years for homeowners to comply. And so really what Jessica's saying is great. She's spot on. Right now, today, we could enact our own local ordinance, but once the state enacts once Zone 0 is enacted, whatever options or as is written, then we lose the local control.
So when you write your letter, you want it to say, we support local control and local enforcement of the fire defensible space that is appropriate to our city, to Pasadena. This one size fits all is folly. It's crazy. And we have a fire department who has enforced this, and we want to maintain control. There's been a lot of legislation that's come out, SB 79, that takes local control away, and it's very difficult for us to get it back. So let's keep it for this piece of regulation.
Thank you. I wanted to offer just kind of like a path to some solutions here. Oh, thank you. I'm from West Pasadena. By June, we're going to have established 4 Firewise communities around the Arroyo Seco. And I'm already talking to 3 other neighborhoods that also want to form Firewise communities. I just recently checked. I I'm in one of the neighborhoods, and I just checked my insurance, and I've already gotten a discount on my insurance from being in a Firewise community. But what I think is even more exciting is one of the ladies that I'm working with in the Busch Gardens area, she has already started collecting contractors and letting them know that we're coming together as buyers, and we're specifically for events. And think about it, neighborhoods are really the way we have to approach this problem. I agree with everything that's been said about Zone Zero, but the Firewise regulations are really for Zone Zero are all about maintenance. I mean, they're really, to me, very practical and hit right on the head. Unfortunately, they're not the insurance companies, so you still have to deal with insurance companies. But thank you.
And your name, sir?
I'm Lee Wallace, West Pasadena.
Thank you. I'm Carlos Jabalera from West Pasadena Residents Association, along with Lee. What's just to further Lee's thoughts, the home hardening certification program currently going through the Assembly bill, I think is very interesting. It would go, I think, a long way in helping with Zone Zero issues. It would incentivize people to create defensible area around their home through a package. It's a 13-bill whole community wildfire prevention package. The key measures in it would be insurance incentives. Basically, it would mandate insurers to provide quotes reflecting potential rate reductions for certified hardened homes, grant prioritization, directing state funds towards communities with high certification rates, and tax exemptions, proposing that hardening upgrades do not trigger property tax reassessments. I think our thought is that hardening communities is critical. And if we can get legislators to do that with these assembly bills, this 13-bill assembly bill program, I think it's critical. And we act as a community as opposed to individuals. Thank you.
I agree. You're only as safe as your neighbor is compliant. And that's why a community workshop and a community certification is a terrific idea.
So what do we plant that's fire retardant for 5 feet around our property?
Good question, simple question. What are suggestions? We'll go to our landscape architect.
Well, it really depends on your solar orientation. Because you want to make sure that when you plant something, it has the right amount of sun or shade, and each of them have different watering needs. So I can give you a list that kind of works within shade. On the south side, some plants that you can look at that are on the west side, which also gets quite a bit of sun, and probably the worst sun if you think about it in the summer. So succulents don't always work in that situation. You want something that is hardy and will maintain moisture when it is in full sun. So you're not going to put some succulents in there because they will just melt. You want to make sure, the thing that has been, we didn't talk about at all, is there is no mulch recommended in this 5-foot zone. Now the problem with that is that mulch helps keep your plants moist. So that's why it almost says that if you have to remove the mulch, don't put plants because nothing's going to live there. But that's not really the truth. So there are plants, you can go to calflora.org, and they have a lot of plants, and they tell what their water needs are, and they tell you their solar orientation. And are they fire resistant? Because every plant will burn. They're not going to be fireproof, I promise you. They're just not. They may tolerate fire for a little amount before they start to ignite. But so I would look at some of these. There's a couple of other, CAL FIRE. I think CAL FIRE also has a good website for plants that will be appropriate in the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface.
Let's have one final comment from each of you. Then I'll make some final comments, and then please, we do not want to take all of this yummy Armenian pastry home with us. So please, if you've already had dinner, take it home for tomorrow's lunch. Go ahead, Chief. Final thoughts.
Get involved while you still have the opportunity, right? If this, as it should be to all of you, an important item, really take the time and get involved. Get educated and get involved.
Stephanie?
Thank you all for coming out and caring about this new piece of legislation, because it is going to affect you. And because you cared so early, you can get involved in helping making this a very reasonable regulation. I highly recommend that you do write letters. Thank you for coming.
So I will close with saying, if we think that following this logic of the insurance company says jump, we need to jump, they're just going to say jump higher. And so I really think, to echo, getting involved and pushing back is important. Our insurance commissioner recently said, Laura, we gave them almost everything they want. Why are they leaving the state? That's the problem. We give them everything we want, they just want more. So we need to stand up. We want to be safe in the face of fire risk, but we need to follow the science. So please write. Thank you.
Can we give our panel a round of applause? So I'm going to wind up on this, and then I want to say a word about electric rates before we close tonight. I personally don't like the word local control, because it's what George Wallace used to say about we don't want them federal guys coming in and telling us what to do. I like the word local authority, because with local authority comes local responsibility, right? We cannot ignore the very real danger of fire. It's going to be part of our lives and our children's lives. We've had the worst, it's been the hottest global year on record 3 years in a row, right? We keep breaking the record, right? 3 years ago was the hottest ever. The next year was hotter than that. This last year was hotter than that. And we'll see, this is the hottest it's ever been in Los Angeles in March in 110 years that we've been recording. And it's a really good point. So we do need to be proactive. We can't just say, no, states stay out of this. Whether it's the FireWise effort for neighborhoods, whether it's our own fire department going out and setting a good example, we do need to harden our homes and harden our neighborhoods and underground our wires and do these things for earthquakes, for fires, and for other natural disasters. That's our responsibility. And if we do that, it's obviously a much better case to the state or the insurance company to say, we have been proactive, we've set the standards, and we've done it our way, in a way that's congruent with our values and with the larger context. So we're not doing unintended consequences that actually make our community hotter and potentially even more vulnerable. So that's what this is all about. Again, I said at the outset that the purpose of these issue forums, and we have them once a month, third Tuesday of the month, here, and we may, for the summer, try to find a cooler place. But we have these here again, first of all, to inform you. And I think this has been very informative for me, and I hope for you. Second, to engage you. How do you personally take initiative? What do you tell your neighbors, and what do you tell the state and your local officials? And the third is to motivate you to actually do that, to take action and to be involved and to take responsibility for this very important issue. I want to say something about electric rates. I serve on the Municipal Services Committee. I've been on there for a year and a half. We are considering on the 23rd, which is next Monday, the City Council is considering very significant electric rates. Last year, the council, before I served, increased water rates, sewer rates, and trash rates. A big reason for that, which will come as no comfort to any of us, is that we had not raised them in a long time. But when you raise them by a lot, people don't like to hear, well, you know, you should be grateful we didn't raise them for a long time. That is not a popular message. On electric rates, the council has a proposal from the staff to increase by 7% next month, 7% in 9 months more, and 7% 9 months later, for a compound of 22% over the course of the next year and a half. You should know about that. Now, where is this coming from? It is coming from the fact of three things. Number one, we have not done a rate study since 2014. So we see the utilities actually made a significant amount of money in the last 2 years. And that has been banked for reserves, because things like disasters mean that we do need to have healthy reserves so that we can withstand things like disasters that may happen. So one is reserves. We have built up the reserves. Now that comes as small comfort to you, because that means we're taking your reserves to build up the utilities reserves. Number two, we have 100-year-old system, right? It's not all 100 years old, but the system has evolved over 100 years, and we have to continually be investing in modernizing it. And the third is what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. You know, it doesn't directly affect us because we don't burn oil, but we do burn natural gas, and natural gas prices have also gone up. So one thing that we did that I'm proud of is that at the Municipal Services Committee, we challenged the normal way in which rates are calculated, which is the big users pay less. And we said that's not fair. And so we did even out the rates. The original proposal was 4% for big users and 9% 3 times. So it would have been a 28% increase for residents. So we've reduced that to 22. That's small comfort. But I want you, in that same spirit, get informed, engage, and be motivated. This is important. This is coming out of your pocketbook. I will vote for it, very likely, because I've spent the last 9 months biting down on this and trying to find ways in which we could save all of you money, because I'm highly conscious of how many people in our district are hanging on by their fingernails. And electric rates are, you can't not pay your electric bill. It's not like Starbucks, or you have to pay, you need electricity. And so I want you to be engaged on this. And I think a significant public debate needs to happen, because when you get these bills, you're going to be mad at us. So before we make this decision, you need to become informed and get involved and speak out, whether you support it, whether you oppose it, whether you want to postpone it, whatever it is. But we're going to take your opinions much more seriously if they're informed, right? If you just say, well, we don't like it, that's not very helpful. But if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, I welcome them. Democracy is the worst form of government ever invented, except every other one, right? So it's better than what they have in Iran. It's better than what they have in North Korea. It's certainly better than what they have in most countries of the world. But it only works if we do. So it's a serious business, and I just wanted to convey that to you so you were informed. You know, the utility would like you to just kind of because, you know, it's their job, and they don't like to take heat. And we shouldn't give them personal heat. They're just doing their job. But this is not Edison, which, by the way, their rates are already higher than our rates will be when we're done. So This is not Edison. This is your utility. And I'm your representative. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Okay. Awesome. We're going to answer